This is the detention center of the Philippine Senate, where small-town Mayor Alice Guo would have been had she not run away. Yes, Alice Guo has run away after failing to appear before the Senate twice. Now, I'm not sure if there's any reason for her to run if she is as innocent as she claims. Not showing up to the Senate hearing after fingerprints matched her to a Chinese national who came to the Philippines as Guo Huaping, same last name, but when she was 13 years old, seems to have been the real crucial evidence to pin Alice Guo as somebody who is not so innocent. And the running away is just very suspicious. And it does confirm to us that some of the analysis I've made and many others have made about who she really is. She is working on behalf of the Chinese government's long-arm reach into the Philippines through these gambling organizations, which are basically scam networks, especially in the Philippines because they're allowed to exist due to the POGOs, which are Philippines online gaming operators, these foreign companies. And so through this, she's been able to serve as a front for what essentially is a network of scams, hacking, even human trafficking, and a lot of times working for the Chinese Communist Party. And they're using these groups to expand the local influence. According to reports of the Philippines, police could not execute the arrest warrant because she was not found anywhere in some of her usual spots. So I'm not just waiting for the Netflix special or the documentary about her story, because this is like a TV drama. As we know that the elected officials of the Philippine Senate have also been questioning her origin as well as who or sort of what kind of a role does she play. I still believe that she's a front rather than an asset in terms of spying for Beijing. But it doesn't mean that the local Chinese embassy as well as the party doesn't want more from an established organization, because this was the beginning of potentially a disastrous chain of, I guess you would call it, reactions had she maintained her position and even potentially moved up the chain. And her defense from the very beginning was quite confusing, as she couldn't answer some of the basic questions about her past, she couldn't recall details, or she was giving false information. To be really honest with you, up until recently about the news that she had run away, I was still like 5% reserved in believing her. Maybe just in case, maybe she's really suffering from some type of memory loss. And it turns out, though, Guo's Facebook was still active during the date that the warrant, the arrest warrant, was signed. But now her Facebook page has gone down. And on that day when she was still active, she wrote a lengthy post answering some of the so-called frequently asked questions about her case. Now, here's a rather wild guess. Just take it as a guess. Remember how Alice Guo, as we've covered, has ties to two Singapore-based Chinese nationals who were also charged and arrested in their own sort of money laundering and scam operations in Singapore. And they have some ties here, right? So what I'm thinking is, what if this is all tip of the iceberg of a large network of these criminals in Southeast Asia? And they all have connections somehow. We've just only caught the very, very, very tip of it. What if there is a delocalized yet centrally planned group that operates across the region? Oftentimes, the Southeast Asian countries are at the knees of the Chinese Communist Party because of financial reasons, because China is able to provide them with support, with aids, or just opportunities. And these groups capitalize on that idea because they get some level of protection from the CCP and their overseas embassies as long as they do and serve some purposes for the Chinese Communist Party, such as hacking, surveilling, or even in many cases trying to kidnap nationals back to China. Essentially, they do the dirty work, right? And they also launder money for Chinese officials. To me, it just doesn't feel like these are all isolated cases with Alice Guo, with her connections to the Singaporean case. Now, obviously, the Philippines is in a sort of a unique scenario right now because of the ongoing conflict in the South China Sea at the Second Thomas Shoal with China. I think the Filipino population is waking up to the threat of the CCP, but that doesn't apply to other countries in Southeast Asia. Of course, you can't mobilize the southeastern governments to dig into their own people to try to find the Alice Guo of the day. That's just impossible to do. But now the case with Alice Guo, it really speaks volume of where things could go when it comes to, being able to gain a political office, being able to be in an area where you allow these companies to exist. Now, obviously, laws have to be put into place first, such as the POGO law here in the Philippines. But the idea here is that if you allow something to exist and you turn a blind eye to it, obviously they're going to take the opportunity because they have certain levels, as we've seen, of financial power to buy their way, buy influence in the area, to take political office. And it's always the debate of sacrificing security over money or having security and losing those financial avenues, I would say. And it's a tough choice for many countries that don't have a very independent economic system, right? If they're close to China, even Japan, many companies are still in China. It's a very attractive force, and that's just objectively speaking. But the end result, as we've been talking about, is that you are allowing China to export these criminal activities to the neighboring countries and allowing them to fester. Just look at northern Myanmar. We know these type of basically gaming or online casino operated by Chinese syndicates that work out of these regions. And there's been, all sorts of things like trafficking, even like I did a video on this about northern Burma or Myanmar, which is a very haunting experience. I'll link it here, you can check it out. But that happens across Southeast Asia. And I just want to say, I bet that had the Philippines government not been so aware of the threat of the CCP, I don't think the case with Alice Guo would have gone very far. Because, I mean, if this was a different time, these type of situations would have been brushed off in fear that they could cause turmoil in terms of the relationship with China. So yeah, it's reality of many countries. They can't afford to anger the CCP, but I think they should be aware of this type of illegal activity, and it's because of that financial reason, or I guess you would say financial relationship with China. And the question is always, is it really worth it to erode your own sovereignty and rule of law in place for money? All right, before we continue to our next topic, here's a sponsor segment from Puritang.
If there is one supplement you want to get incorporated into your diet, it's a good omega-3 supplement. It's the best all-around defender for your health. It reduces inflammation, cholesterol, improves eyesight, and reduces risk for heart problems, as well as helps with joint pain, among other benefits. Today, I want to introduce you to Puritang's green vegetables. Puritang gets their ingredients straight from the high mountains of South Korea, and the omega oils are extracted from purslane and perilla seeds. It's 100% vegan. Now, personally, I've been using Omega for about 9 years, close to 10 years now. I've recently switched to Puritang for about a few weeks now. Here's why. We mostly get our Omegas from fish, right? But that's not the best case for everyone, especially there's the aftertaste. It might not be suitable for vegetarians or vegan. So the most important part, right, we often forget is the actual concentration for Omegas. Puritang soft gels have a much higher content for Omega 3, 6, 7, and 9 than many of the brands out there. And some say that they notice there's less hair loss, more energy, lower cholesterol levels, and overall improved health. I think the best part for me is the lack of inflammation or the reduction of inflammation. Other brands also, they use this high heat method to extract the oil, which in turn creates a lot of harmful byproducts. Puritang's green vegetable is done using a patented method of supercritical carbon dioxide low temperature extraction, so it preserves the natural properties and maintains high purities. First of its kind. So get it for yourself or as a gift to your loved ones ahead of the holiday season. Use my code DZ2023 and you can receive free shipping globally. Check out my link in the description and comment today.
All right, let's talk a bit about China's economy, because right now the CCP is in the third plenary session, which is deliberating on a bunch of pointless economic decisions, which I've talked about and we've seen for the last 2 years have done no real change to China's economic downturns. So none will work, but they're going to try. And because that's what formalities are like in China, and because we've seen that over the past 2 years, they've tried over 100 different things, and none of them is a real fundamental change, we're expecting these to not work either. But what's interesting is that we're also witnessing a miracle from the Chinese Bureau of Statistics. And in their Q2 data, which is quarter 2 data of the early summers, they seem to have performed another miracle. They're able to turn the most disastrous performance numbers, the GDP numbers, into a positive number. At least this time, they seem to have done so with a bit of shame. Now, the second quarter data show a growth of GDP at 4.7%, which is lower than the quarter 1 growth, which was 5.3%. Of course, these are official data, so I actually did a video on how fake the Q1 data was, so I'll link it here again. You can check out the exact calculations and how their numbers don't match. But this was also, the 4.7% is lower than what many economists predicted, many reported on Reuters or Bloomberg, which was at 5.1%. So it didn't meet the expectations of experts or the performance of the previous quarter. Now, Obviously, the fundamental issues in China, they haven't been able to solve since the end of zero COVID, and China's economy is doomed. I've repeatedly said this, and I don't expect it to change in the near future. Now, in the video about how China's GDP and allegedly the growth is leading the rest of the world, namely the US and EU and other countries, there were many comments that were just basically sarcastically, they were making fun of the lies and the propaganda again. For example, okay, got it, wink face. Why did my income decrease so much? Clap emoji. People all be encouraged, excited, and happy. Ahahahahaha. See, we're ahead. I can rest well. When are we not leading? Laugh emoji. Dominating the universe. Master of the universe. I love you so much. Smiley face. Now, this term of leading other countries by the National Bureau of Statistics is like the same as the isolated term that they use at the foreign ministry in China, which was after the 4 Americans were attacked and the Japanese school kids were attacked in China. So they love using these terms, right? Supposedly that's going to justify the terrible economy or the situation in China, but obviously people don't believe them. And clearly we know because they fake their numbers, their so-called leading of the US and others, that's just not true. You'll never find, though, the Bureau of Statistics becoming the doomsayers of China. They're not going to be opening saying that our numbers are negative. Obviously, numbers are numbers, but the real situation in China is dire. And for this, they have 3 reasons as to why this is not the CCP's fault. So for the past 2 years, they've been saying things like, for example, that the economy cannot always be in an upward high-speed trend. It's going to come down, and it's a historical necessity for it to do so, right? It's not anybody's responsibility. And then the second reason is that they're saying that they have to pay up the historical debts caused by other leadership in the past, which is, there's high consumption, high pollution, rough development, the growth of these toxic industries in manufacturing. All of those things will be eliminated as China moves towards a different type of economic model. Third reason, as we've always heard, is that China is still a developing nation and that they're being suppressed and oppressed by Western capitalism. So in a nutshell, the current economic difficulties in China are not caused by the central leadership, they're caused by previous leadership and Western forces. Obviously, that's just not true because capitalistic reforms in China are what drove the economic changes in the first place. Of course, they're going to ignore that. Now, this is a feature article on Lianhe Zaobao, which is a Singapore-based pro-China newspaper. And this feature, the reporter went into Shenzhen, which is a tier 1 megacity in southern China. And he notices something very interesting, which is that libraries on weekdays are filled with young people sitting on their laptops. Some are watching videos, some are sending resumes to job applications, and others are taking naps. So he concludes that young people would spend their day at the library in fears of telling their family that maybe they lost their jobs, or just to keep the normal sort of social momentum going for their daily lives. It also tells us that big cities in China are at the forefront of these economic disastrous policies that have destroyed what was once especially in Shenzhen, was a tech hub. It was the forefront of the reform and opening up era. And remember, before China stopped releasing their unemployment data for young people, it was sitting at 21.4 or 0.3%. Now it allegedly dropped down to about 15%, which is still pretty high, but that's again because the numbers are fake. In the article, the reporter mentions a woman, 35 years old, named Zhang, and she was a financial manager that's been unemployed since last year. And she's basically tried to find different jobs. Many of them don't fit her sort of criteria, whether because they're asking for lower pay, but same amount of effort and working hours, or maybe even longer working hours with less benefit. Or that these companies simply aren't hiring. And she says that this is the age of employers looking for employees, not the other way around. And so, there's a massive amount of competition. People in a pool with the same degrees or even higher number of degrees are not landing the job because, it's just so competitive. And she says here, which I'll read to you, I think is very interesting. I've been working in finance for more than 10 years. My salary has reached an average of 25,000 yuan, or RMB, or about 4,600 Singapore dollars per month. And now, for the same management position, many companies are only willing to offer a salary of 8,000 to 12,000 yuan. Working hours are longer. The treatment is much worse than before. We see a salary drop, we see an increase in demand, less opportunities for the worsening of benefit packages, right? So to anybody, that seems like this is not how a growing or leading economy is supposed to feel like. And so the real problem can't be solved by the Bureau of Statistics. It can look good on paper, but what the CCP isn't telling us is that the real situation is people are suffering much more than ever before in China. All right, that's it today for the episode on the Alice School disappearance as well as China's economy. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, bye-bye.